welcome to our Fireside Chat with Esther Yang. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you so much, Ellen. I really appreciate for being here. And thank you to all of you as well.
Yeah, so I'm Joyce Short, and my co-host is Ellen Pollovy. Before we're through, we're going to try and get to some questions in the chat. So if you have some questions, make sure you place them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get your questions answered. So our guest tonight, as I mentioned, is Esther Yang. And Esther is a New York single mom. She was named New Yorker of the Week by New York One for her efforts creating bully-free zones in public schools. She's been a community organizer. She was a judicial delegate and community board advisor for Bellevue Hospital. She also was a community organizer for Senator John Liu. She is a second-degree black belt, so you definitely don't want to tangle with her. You don't want to be on her bad side. And she also teaches online for free. She teaches yoga and she teaches meditation. And I think, Naomi, I think you enjoy some of Esther's classes, do you not?
Yeah, I go to her mini yoga class. Now I have to try meditation class.
Very nice. Very nice. So how do we get to your classes, Esther?
You actually just go to voteestheryoung.com and then you just register. It's free. It's Monday to Friday for 15 minutes, only 15 minutes. So it's 10:15 to 10:30. And then for the Thursday night, it's 25 minutes meditations. I call it a do nothing meditation because you really don't do anything. You just lie down and then you just listen to my voice from 9 o'clock to 9:25. And I started doing it because of the pandemic, because a lot of the seniors can't go out. And this is a way to be connected and just to also to check in that everybody's safe, everybody's okay. And if I see like regular, for example, I see Naomi on a regular basis. And if I don't see her, I usually just text her and I said, hey, are you okay? Because usually for the regulars that come in on a daily basis, I usually check in with them. It's a small support group, I guess.
Very nice. And it's good to have that kind of relaxation and that exercise and people to people to have community with during the pandemic. So that's a very, very nice support that you're providing for people. So one of the things that we'd like to know is a little bit about what actually got you interested in politics.
Well, honestly, my ex-husband took all my money. That's really what happened. I had no money and my daughter was 2 years old and I was really, really struggling. And honestly, I went to my elected official and no one helped me. And so I was really taken back. By the answer of no, and I didn't know where to go. And then I befriended National Organization for Women, Marsha Pappas. And so she kind of guided me what to do and where to go and really understand. I was just a typical yoga teacher, a psychotherapist, black belt, and I really not into politics. So Marsha actually helped me and said, this is how the law got created. This is what you do. This is what happened. So I realized it's part of my fault too, that I was not involved in a community. And most of the elected officials really didn't know who I am or who I was. And so I a little bit blame on myself. So, but 20 years down the road, my daughter is graduating from Bard, and I really now still work very closely with National Organization for Women because I think it's really important for all of us to really understand how the system works.
Very nice. So congratulations on all of your efforts. And it was a long, hard road to get there, but you're there, and that's wonderful. So can you explain to everybody, because we don't think much about what our district leaders do. Can you explain to me to everybody what actually is the function of a district leader?
Well, in every assembly, there's two parts. Sometimes there are three parts. for district leader. So we live in a 76 assembly, Roosevelt Island's part of it. So there's two parts, part A and part B. And within this part, there's a male district leader and there's a female district leader. So I'm running for 76 assembly part A for the female part. There's also the male part. And what district leaders do, it's actually they work very closely with elected officials. So that would be city council, congresswoman, or the senator, or anyone else in the elected official, and just really on the grassroots level to talk to constituents, to voters, what exactly they really need and what they're looking for. And that's really what district leaders, now district leaders are, of course, not all district leaders teach yoga, but I just want to teach yoga because it's something that I've been doing for the past 30 years. So this is something that I offer because I'm a health and wellness advocate. But district leaders just strictly work very closely with elected official to get things done for the community. Mm-hmm. And we're not being paid. It's free. It's voluntary job, but we are just elected for it.
Oh, very, very interesting. So what do you see as the most important 3 issues for you in going forward?
Well, education is always very important to me, right? And being bullied, I'm one of the creators for the bully-free zone for the public schools, many public schools. So that's important to me. I think kids need to grow up in a very safe environment. And so because they will eventually become adults and that affects their self-esteem. So I think it's really important for educations for that. And I also believe that housing is important. So tenants, and I work very closely with like a lot of tenants advocate. And the last thing is I think it's really important to take care of our seniors. It's not just the age where you just put them in a nursing home. And even with the nursing home, with the incident, with the COVID, it was not okay. So I think, my 3 main, if I have to just choose 3, it would be like education, housing, and senior care.
And what do you think you can do about them?
Well, for the educations, and I think we need to work with obviously with the elected official, also with parents. I was a PTA president, so I work very closely with parents and kids and finding the issues and what to do with the kids. I mean, right now, our main issue is education is kids are in Zoom for 8 hours. So we really need to, balance where we are and working like teachers. For example, I know a lot of teachers are afraid to go back to school and principals are afraid to go back to school. So that needs to be taken into considerations for education and seniors care. And I think that, in Roosevelt Island, for example, and I was talking about this to Lisa, I was really surprised that the seniors do not get hot, warm meal on a daily basis, because it used to be on a daily basis. And if they don't have activities, where can they go? And yes, granted that it was COVID, but I think, and I share with Lisa, hey, they can come to my yoga class, but I think they need to be activities. They need to be involved in something, because if not, it's going to be affecting the community as well. So housing, for example, I think a lot of people don't realize about the evictions moratorium. When there's no job, there's no money. And I'm here for just merely for them to understand tenants' rights, senior rights, and even for parents' rights. So all these things that when I was in Bellevue Hospital, that as a former advisory board, it's my main thing was to create a patient's rights. I think it's really important to know what your rights is, because when I was struggling, when you asked me the questions in politics, no one told me how to deal with judges, dealing with attorney, interviewing with attorney, and finding the right attorney. So no one ever guided me to. It's not something that certainly that I don't talk about in my family dinner table, but it's none of my friends know that too. So running for district leader, and for these past 20 years that I've been running as a community organizer, is I want to create as a resource center. If you go to voteestheryoung.com, it lists what you can ask questions, and I just want the vaccines resource center and the anti-Asian to contact the Attorney General's office, just for people to go, because sometimes you just don't know.
Mm-hmm. So you need a resource.
Right.
You're going to create a resource for the community.
When I go to Roosevelt Island, I find it so strange that we don't have a bank.
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't make sense. I mean, how can about 12,000 people living with no bank? you know, and I think I was really surprised that no one looked into that. So I know a couple of country banks that I reach out to actually, but we can't mention the names because I had invited them to Roosevelt Island. I talked to them, and, you know, obviously business is business, right? So I told them that they might want to consider it to come to the bank, to come to Roosevelt Island. So I brought a couple of my friends and we've talked about them, and I've sent them the demographic, this, you know, about Roosevelt Island, because I think it's really important to have a bank, especially for the seniors that cannot go in like the train, or they just can't walk because they're seniors.
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to have something, the bank anyway.
Absolutely. So, Ellen, how about you? I'm going to pass the torch on to you. There you go. There we go. There we go. Okay. Oh, yours is a real life torch today. It's amazing. You got over your fear of flames. Look at that.
I put it in a glass.
Beautiful.
It's safeguarded. Okay. So, you know, I have looked at your website and it is huge. There's a lot to it. So Esther, you have a lot of good ideas. So I'm going to, and the district leader is really a voluntary job, the elected voluntary job. And so you seem to have a lot of energy for this voluntary job. It's really great. So if you were elected, how would you work with the poll workers to, it looks like you're supposed to hire poll workers and select them for elections. How is that done?
Well, I wouldn't want to do it the olden ways. I would more open it to everyone that wants to do it. And right now it's being selected that the district leader choose the poll worker. I was trained in the Board of Elections. I don't think that's, I like to do it that way. I would like to open it up to everyone, whether it's Roosevelt Island or up the East Side, that anyone that wants to be a poll worker, they can.
Don't they need special training in order to do that?
Yes, they do, but it's a day training. I did it, but I want to give the option to do it for people that would like to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's not just pick and like choose. I think it's important that we always have an open transparency space.
Mm-hmm.
Is this for, it's like Democratic inspectors? Like, how does that work?
Well, because I'm a Democrat, we choose our poll worker, and the Republican choose their Republican poll worker.
I see. So you would open it up to anybody to apply, and then you would determine who would be the best person for the job.
Well, yes, I certainly will ask the elected official, because I work very closely with elected officials, right? So if someone wants to apply, I can ask the elected officials, what do you think about this person? What do you think? But I think it's a good idea to be trained anyway by the Board of Elections, so you know how it works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And so you've already been listening. So one of the other roles is you listen to everybody in the neighborhood and you find out what the issues are, and then you make an attempt to find the right people to address these issues. It looks to me like you've been already doing this.
Right, I have been doing that. Now I just want kind of the title, you know, so I have been doing it for the past 20 years.
Okay. So once you get this title, presumably, you know, if you get elected,
of course,
would you be in touch with REAC and, you know, introduce yourself to them?
Of course, I've already talking to them anyway. You know, of course, because that's part of my work as a community liaison, right? To work with the NYPD. I was adopted, so my dad was a police officer, so I'm always very friendly with the commanding officers, because I think a police officer needs to know the residents. Like, for example, what happened with the seniors recently is not okay. You know, even though we didn't bring it up, because I know I read about it, but it's not okay, because I think we need to, even though the chief apologized for it, but I think we need, the problem's already been created. So I think we need to stretch our empathy to people that with us, whether you are a police officer, it's just neighborly care. It's like a good Samaritan. So to me, that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. I think you're referring to the woman who asked for help.
Yes.
And they wouldn't, she asked, to be escorted home and they refused.
Right.
Which is, kind of unusual. When I first moved to Roosevelt Island, believe it or not, the minibus was a station wagon. And if you needed it, you'd call them up and they'd come and pick you up and take you where you wanted to go. So that was kind of the concept behind, our kind of care and interaction. And that's kind of fallen by the wayside, even to the extent that when the public safety department is asked for their help, they're actually refusing to do what we would expect them to do. That was, pretty awful, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I agree to, that if she was to be, assuming that she was to be arrested, she still has to sit at the back. So to say that this COVID-19, because they couldn't take her because she was, it's COVID-19 protocol, but assuming that she got arrested, the officers still have to take her and put her in the back
car. Yeah.
So to me, that doesn't make sense. And also common sense. And it's sensitivity training, right? This is what I'm talking about, senior care. It's like, I'm really surprised and I hope that something will happen at it. I think people that deal with the public needs to have that sense of caring, and to just be callous like that, to me that's not okay. And the person needs to be suspended and for the person to call the commanding officer and the commanding officer said no, both of them is not okay.
I think the end result of all this is that there's going to be training.
Right.
That Kevin, what's Kevin's last name?
Brown.
Brown.
So the chief of public safety has said that there's going to be training.
Right. And I think, like police officer, they need to remember that they work for the public. The same thing, if I get elected, I don't, even though I don't get paid, I actually have to report to you guys. You guys are my boss. The voters are my bosses. And I think, unfortunately, some elected officials forget about that. But really, that you guys are my boss. So I learned from nobody wanting to help me 20 years ago. And so I want to make sure that that's not going to happen ever again to anyone.
This is the next part. One other part of your role would be to organize opposition when elected officials or state and city agencies ignore local residents. So it sounds
I'm doing a rally on May 2nd. That's a TriState Rally for Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York. And I'm just doing the rally. So if it's oppositions, again, I probably will state my opposition to the elected official, because again, I don't work for my elected official. Even though I work closely with them, I work with the voters.
What's the purpose of the rally?
It's to stop anti-Asian violence, because the 65-year-old woman that was in Hell's Kitchen on 43rd Street the hips was crushed, and I was just the same thing like the police, the safety officer. I was just stunned that he just closed the door, and yes, he flagged the police off. But to me, that could happen to us, could happen to our daughters, our son, our family. So for someone to have like a cold heart like that, I was really shocked. And I believe that hate does not belong anywhere in New York City at all. And so and this is not just for Asian, this is for anybody, whether you're Caucasian or Latino, African American. This is like simple courtesy and kindness, being a good Samaritan. So to me, it doesn't make sense, because that's not how I was raised. So we're doing a rally to just invoke people to register people to vote, B, to have a civic engagement, to have a conversations. And doing TriState is to really awaken everybody. At the end of the day, we're in this together. And like New York, no matter how challenging the pandemic, we're in this together. And this is why, I offer the yoga classes, right, 5 days a week, because it's for 15 minutes. Because it's very important, because when we take care of our body will take care of us. And this will eventually help New Yorker to be happy New Yorker.
Right.
Some
So
people.
where is the rally going to be? Where's the rally going to be held?
It's going to be actually in City Hall in Philadelphia. And then we're going to go to 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go to New Jersey at noon at City Hall. And then we're going to come to New York at City Hall at 4 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be at the step of the City Hall. So it's going to be TriState Rally.
Wow. And it's going to be broadcast?
Broadcast. It's going to be, we already told some of the leaders that already know it. And so we're going to do it. So this is your questions to Ellen. He's like, if the opposition, so some elected official agrees or not agree, it doesn't really matter. We as a citizen believe that, I think it's up to us to step up to do something about it. And I'm not asking that all of you to do it, but I think, peace begins with me. Anything begins with me, right? So then I just step up. I'm going to do it. And I'll invite all my friends, whoever wants to come, and brainwash my family to join me,
Excellent.
Great.
What else, Sheldon?
So you're already, the other part of the list of your jobs is you're an information resource for the district voters in numerous ways. And it's certainly, you've explained that one already. So, you plan to have an information resource on your website, or how do you plan to do it?
Yeah, on my website and also the email list. I have a lot of phone numbers and email through the Board of Elections, actually. So I just want to share to people that, hey, these are available for the vaccines, for example, the Attorney General, if you need information, and just to really connect with voters that this information is available. And hopefully that civic engagement will get them excited to vote, because we have in our district, we have like about 20,000 voters, but only 2,000 votes. And that's kind of sad, only 10%. Wow. And so I want to get people excited to vote. And because I work, starting from even age 3, right, for meditations and yoga. So I want they learn how to vote by majority or really understand the system. I've taken the kids to meet judges and they sat in a gallery. And so I think understanding how the system works, I believe, make us a kinder person.
So you're an educator.
I am.
You're an educator. Great. So will you do a voter registration drive on Roosevelt Island as well?
Well, I actually have. So every time I speak to voters, I have a voter registrations in my bag. So when I see teenager and I said, are you registered to vote? And so if they're 17, I said, keep this, take a look at it or register, because by the time you get to be 18, you get in. I carry it every day, wherever in my pocketbook anyway. And when I see young ones, I do that. I will do voters registrations in Roosevelt Island, of course, because that's part of the plan.
Where can we get voter registration? Like download them? Can we just?
You can actually go online.
Are there printable forms?
Yeah, they're printable form. I have the printable form. I always carry it every day, wherever, in my bag. So you can do it online if you have a driver license.
I see.
If you have a driver license, you can register online. But if you do not have a driver license, you need that paper. They can go to 42 Broadway for the board elections. Mm-hmm. We're trying, I know a lot of us are trying to create that voters registration to put it in post office. And all of us has been trying to work behind the scene to make it really easy for high school kids, before they graduate, that they can do it. And also not just to register, right, is to vote. That's the key point. And the same thing with green card holder, not just to become a green card holder, is to plan to become a U.S. citizen. Mm-hmm. And once you become a U.S. citizen, to plan to become, to vote. So it's clone, repeat. It's always a clone and repeat. And that's really what we want, because 2,000 voters, it's really sad.
Even just registering alone is helpful for the community, because our legislators look at what the registration roll is, how big it is, and that really is part of the decision-making process that, who are they going to pay attention to?
Right.
They see that you have more registration, then there's a chance that whatever they do for the community is going to be seen by a greater number of people. So even getting people to register, even if they don't vote, is helpful for the community. Certainly if they vote, and if they're an enlightened voter, then they're going to make choices that are going to help the community.
Right.
One way or the other, just registering, that's also very, very beneficial for the community.
I mean, like having this fireside chat is also important, right? So that people get educated,
Information, yeah.
get more information, they understand how the system and getting to know the candidates. And it's also a way, what I tell my students, it's also a way to vote people out of office. You know, if you don't like somebody, you vote them out of office.
Exactly.
Like council is coming up and it's 2 years because we get to vote for them again in 2 years. So normally it's 2 terms, but this time city council, because of the census, we get a chance to vote them 3 times. If you don't like them within 2 years after you vote for them, you can always vote them out.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. That's one of the problems that we have with our REOC system.
Yeah.
Even if we, have a referendum and tell the governor who we want and that person is appointed, we have no ability to get that person off of that board if we don't like how they operate. They're going to sit there as long, they're going to sit there year after year after year. The governor isn't going to do anything about it. Even if we tell the governor that, we'd have a referendum and tell them, we don't want that person on the board, it doesn't matter. It's just ignored. So, I think it's a very, very good lesson in democracy.
Right.
It's that elections are not just about who you put in office. They're also about who you remove from office.
That's right.
So that you keep legislators accountable to the community.
And it's good for democracy, right? The more candidates that we have, the more harder they're going to work. So people said, well, we should not have a primary. No, actually primary is good because it makes everybody work harder, because it makes people reach out to voters. And that's the most important part. For me, it's like, I work for voters. I don't work for the elected official, even though I work closely with them, but I don't work for them. I work for the voters. So whatever the voters want, they get. And I also educate them. You don't like somebody, you don't like your senator, you don't like your city council, you don't like your mayor, you don't like anybody, you vote them out. You don't like me, you don't have to vote for me too. You can vote me out too. So I think it forced people to be accountable. Maybe because I just think like a yoga teacher, so I'm not like, I don't think like a politician, but I think it's really important that politician is being put on a hot seat and putting their feet to the fire. So it's not just promises. It's like, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? And then when it's not done, you should ask the questions.
So let's talk about your bully-free zone.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was really bullied. I went to school in Singapore and I came here. I was born, so I was really bullied in 3 different countries, in 3 different languages. And the way that I was bullied is like, sometimes people have a misconception what bully is. Bully can have different layered. It could be like when you're being hit or when they verbally bullied you. Bully can also mean that when you don't exist, when they don't see you, you become really invisible and really destroy the kids' self-esteem. And so when you explain this to the teachers, and most kids don't know how to articulate what it means to be bullied. And when you explain to the teacher, and the teacher will just dismiss it by saying, you're too sensitive. He doesn't mean it that way. She doesn't mean it that way. And so, like being in karate, so I always taught the students that we don't hit somebody intentionally, like, the head contact or the kidney contact, right? No back. But of course they'll say it's okay because you say you're sorry, but it's better if you don't have to say you're sorry, because now you're thinking about your opponent, because you just don't hit their head because you get disqualified. So that's the same thing, I think. But not everybody has this innate skill. And this is where we all come in, right? Where we have to educate everyone, or including the little kids, not to be gaslighted. Gaslighted means like when someone says their reality, the other person said, no, that's not what it is. Like the Weinstein kids, no, he didn't mean it that way. Or like whatever it is, that's not what he said. So I think that's what it's called by being gaslighted. So I think the first thing about understanding about what bully is, and it's like to really know what it means. So when I teach a bully-free zone, I teach all the kids like what it means to be a bully. And most importantly, I always ask the question, all right, how do we win together? So being a bully, it's like, I tell people, or I tell my students, it's like as if like you're in a bubble. You don't go into the bubble. You know, you have in this bubble, and you have to be mindful. So your action, your thoughts, your words, and your behavior needs to match. If the other person said it's not matching, then you got to come back to yourself and figure out what that means. You know, it's like this very easy term, like even with consent, you have to get consent. That's very basic, but some people don't understand the basic. So then we have to slow it down. So the way that I slow it down is by getting a, you know, by getting an agreement with the principal that this is something that we will talk about to all the students. And then by getting an agreement with the parents that this is something that we want to talk about. So that's very important because it's a reinforcement. It's easy to hate. Everybody can hate anybody, but it's so challenging to love someone because that is a constant affirmation that you have to repeat over and over again. To hate is something, it's easy. To dislike somebody, to say like, you know, F this and F, that's easy, but the other way is harder. So my work with the bully free zone is to work closely with the parents, with the teachers, and with the kids as young as 3 years old, because we do meditation and yoga every single day. And finding that, I believe that when kids, and all of us too, that when we find our inner peace, we reflect that inner peace, right? And a lot of people that do mean things to us, and I always tell the kids this, is because they don't love themselves. It's not about you, it's about the other person. But then what can you do about it, you know? But so that's how I created the bully free zone in the many public schools that I'm in, that I educate, that I got invited in.
So you're teaching people not to be bullied. And,
Well, yes.
and you're also teaching people not to bully.
That's right. So it's like a two-edged sword. I teach people how not to be a bully. I teach people the definitions of a bully, and I teach the victim the script, what to say to a bully. And also I educate the teachers, right? Because teachers, like I said, they would say, he doesn't mean it that way. And also it's a problem when you're bullied in school because principals don't want to have that record. So they trying to dismiss it and confusing, you know, the situation, but it becomes systematic. So we want to also principal to really understand that it's not that they will get a bad report card. This is something that we need to address. You know, so this is not just one simple thing. So a bully is not compartmentalized. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a holistic perspective from students to parents to teachers and to principal to the custodian to the school officer. This is the whole combined thing. And sometimes children that are bullied, that's a bully, we need to also look at their background because maybe they're being bullied at home. So that has to take into consideration. So like I said, when I talk to the principal, we're in this together, you know. So if we don't address this, it's like that. We don't address this now, we have to address it 15 years later. So now or later. So it's better that we address it as much as we can to avoid, to increase that empathy, right? So we have a program, the empathy program. It's really opening it up and having a discussion what empathy means. Remember, it only took one person, right, to destroy the world, Hitler, one person. Just one person. And I believe that it can also take one person to really change that world. Like we got invited to speak in the middle of April about AAPI to stop the hate violence. And I was invited to the principal to talk to high school kids. And so I'm going to invoke them to really, your heart is a muscle. So how can we stretch it even further? You know, by just stretching it even more. And people said, oh no, you don't have the time. We make the time. So I think the problem with the society, we are so busy that we don't connect anymore. That's really the sad part. But, you know, part of me being a district leader, and even before the district leader, forget these positions for a second. I've always been talking to people one-on-one anyway, and being their number one fan. And this is one of the things that whether it's my students or everybody else, it's just trying to be the best of myself. I'm not competing with anybody. I'm competing with me. It's like how Esther defines Esther's own integrity. So that's really like this job is a free job. I'm not even getting paid, but it's something that I want to do because I believe that I can be good at it. And I believe that we also need a minority. We have 10 elected officials, and there's not a single minority, with the exception to Roosevelt Island. I'm sorry, not Senator Serrano, but in my district, for my district, we have the Congresswoman Maloney, we have City Ben Kalos as a city council, we have Senator Cleese Kruger, and we have 4 district leaders, 2 state committee members, and that's not a single minority, no Latino, no African American, no Asian. And I have to look at that, and I have to consider that, and I have to look at the bigger picture and said, well, what about the Asian that's in the Roosevelt Island or in Upper East Side? We're not being represented. What about the African American or the Latino? So when we have one race, it's not good. So, and we have to look at the 8.1 million in New York City, where the minority is the majority. So this is why I'm running for office too, because to change the systematic, and I believe that we're here, it's like history in the making, because I'm going to be the first Asian or the first minority to be in these positions, even though it's free, it's voluntary, but it's something that I think that it's important that my younger students, like 3 years old, to have a role model, an Asian role model,
I just want to remind everybody that you're welcome to put a question in the chat if there's something that you'd like to ask Esther this evening.
Yes, and I'm yapping away.
Yeah, Ellen, you have another question.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your ideas about tenant advocacy?
Well, I've always worked very closely with Michael McKee. He's a huge tenants advocate, huge tenants' rights. So, so I've known him for like over a decade. So it's very, very important that tenants are not just treated like sardines, even in a court. So first thing first, right? Because a lot of people getting to the point of eviction is because they don't know how the court system works. Because as a judicial delegate, we educate them. Like I was not educated 20 years ago. I had no idea what was happening. So I think it's really important that if you don't know what's happening about being a tenants advocate, is you call 311, or they can actually just call me to SGN community, and I can guide them through what to do with eviction notices. So I think it's also being a tenants advocate. There are 2 parts to being a tenants advocate, not just dealing with tenants, but also dealing with developer to making sure there's affordable housing. Like New York cannot just be for the wealthy people. It has to be, when they're building housing, they're building everything, there has to have at least 20%. I mean, right now it's 10%, but I think they should be 20%. And I think we have to protect all the rent stabilized apartment as well. I mean, I'm very lucky, to be honest. I live in a rent stabilized apartment. And so I think we need to protect the people that rent stabilized. Unfortunately, some seniors are in the rent stabilized, they don't know their rights. Because whether they are getting older, they're having dementia. So not a lot of people know that. So there is a service like the adult service, right? But everybody is afraid to contact them. So like as an advocate for tenants advocates, and that's where I will be, is just to tell them that everything is going to be okay. They don't have to go to court. If they cannot go to court, they can have an attorney. And we now have, I think we all work hard for it. If you are in the close to evictions, you are allowed to get a free attorney.
It's a great system.
Yeah. And even including the pandemic, I think I just want to be clarified for people that if you do not have the money to pay for, let's say, $20,000 because of the pandemic, because you lose your job or anything, because you got sick, the landlord, and this is thanks to Harvey Epstein and Senator Brett Holman, the landlord cannot kick you out based on your non-payment during the pandemic. They have to put that $20,000, let's say $20,000 for a monthly payment. So they cannot use that as a reason to evict you. Mm-hmm. And that's law has been passed because I know Harvey and Brad really work hard for that. So that's being a tenant advocate, is like, how do we protect tenants not being evicted? Because when we evict tenants, it increased COVID-19 as well. And that's why there's a moratorium to it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Are the landlords being made whole in some way, or they're just
eating? To be honest with you, there's money involved with the governor. And I think the governor should release it to some of the landlord as well. So I don't think that it would be fair to just taking care of the tenants and forgetting the landlord, right? I think the governor needs to release that money to help some small landlord and what to do.
Is that federal money that's being held for the landlords?
Yeah, that's a federal money being held.
I read about that today.
Yeah, because Cuomo is not releasing it. I know he has some problem by himself right now, but but he's not releasing it. And that's not okay too, because he needs to release to give landlords some breathing room while helping tenants. So, in life, like in anything, there's always the yin and the yang, and I feel that all of us need to find that balance, right? So the more balanced you are, the more you find that inner peace. I feel that you can make better decision. And I think not just you, like I personally, like I have my own SBA mentor. I have mentor that I speak with. So I think it's really important that we ourselves have mentor that we can talk to and run through, and that these mentors will help you raise yourself up, not take you down. So I think that's a difference. And this is something that I teach with bullying too, that when you choose your friends, you need to choose your friends wisely, because you need to have friends that don't encourage you to hit somebody and get you in trouble. You need to have friends that raise you to be nicer. Like I give example this to my student, that when you see someone with a wheelchair, do you wait until that person asks you to open the door, or can you just open the door because you can? So that's always like the question that we ourselves have to discern, right? In everything that we do, when we're being challenged by people saying mean things to us, by defaming our character, we're being challenged. So then we need to ask ourselves, all right, can we rise above this and be a better person? And, and not create more karma by saying bad things about this person? Or can we make this a lessons? Like for me, myself, with my ex-husband, it was a very painful, expensive lesson. But, but my grandparents were herbalists. And so they always taught me how to make my poison into my medicine. So my medicine became like being a judicial delegate, being actively involved in politics, being a community organizer, and really having a lot of my friends, whether this district or a lot of district, like voters that has the same value that we are going to change this New York City for the better. So I don't just work for our district, but I work very closely with Lower East Side, with Chinatown, with Harlem. So because we as an organizer, like attracts like, right? So we attract for same cause. How can we make New York better?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's great.
Ellen, I think we're kind of nearing the end here. How about one more question? Pick your best.
So, okay. So, well, this was actually the last question.
Okay.
So, you had mentioned your third topic that you wanted to discuss with seniors. So I would like to know, you mentioned a little bit about seniors and hot food, et cetera. What would be your main point that you'd like to make on
I think
seniors?
And this is not just based on government, right? This is also neighborly care. I think we need to check on our seniors. Like I am the building captain for seniors. So they call me to get their pharmacy, supermarket, there's issue, but I assign myself to that. So all the seniors always call me and they always have my cell phone number. One time, one of the seniors, their heater broke down, so she stays in my house. But I think this is a question for all of us to really be neighborly care. But in terms of government-wise, I think it's important that seniors have hot meals. And if they don't have the hot meals, they have the resources to know how to get the hot meals. And I think if we're not serving the hot meal for like senior center, I'm not blaming Lisa, but I think we need to figure out why is that and how can we change that? I think seniors need to not just be like in a closet or be put away. I think seniors need to understand that they need to have some dancing, some yoga, chess. They need some activities. Because the same as what you're saying, right? It's like like I always said, you don't use it, you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So those seniors care is without the government part. I think all of us needs to reach out to our seniors and be willing to be a building captain. And then after that, work with the senior center and maybe volunteers, not just for the seniors. I know I offer my services to Nikki and Christy. Anytime they want a free yoga class for their classes, let me know, or self-defense, which reminds me, tomorrow, Thursday is a self-defense technique. So come, you can register at voteestheryoung.com. You learn about self-defense, because I think with all this violence going on, I think it's really important to know about self-defense techniques. So that's what I would be doing with the senior care. And just to make sure that they have hot meals, make sure that they have activities, and make sure that someone checked on them. And some of the seniors don't have any more family. They live alone, and or their family don't want them anymore. And that's just part of reality that we have to look into.
Mhm. So they need some supports.
Yes.
Absolutely. And having some kind of buddy system might be very helpful as people become seniors, right? To check up on each other. So does anybody have a question for us in the chat? I don't see one. So Esther, one more time, how do we get to your yoga and your meditation class?
So you can go to voteestheryoung.com and you can register for the Monday to Friday yoga for the 15 minutes. You can register for the Thursday meditations. Like I said, the do nothing meditations. And you can also do the self-defense technique. This Thursday, we're doing that. Last Thursday, we did the COVID-19, the different vaccinations of the COVID-19. So there's other like in the YouTube channels about our past weekly forum about PPP loan and on all different topics. So it's every Thursday, it's posted there. But this Thursday is voteestheryoung.com, and everything is in there for the resources. And anyone can have my cell phone number, which is 917-369-0032. And it's true that I'm always on the phone, so you can always text me, and the email is estheryoungcommunity@gmail.com.
Excellent. So folks, thank you for joining us this evening. And certainly, Esther, thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a delightful evening. And
Thank you so much, Joyce. Thanks, Ellen.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Next week, our guest is going to be Dan Court on Monday and Lucy Lang on Wednesday. And they're both the first district attorney candidates that we're going to be chatting with by our Fireside. So we're about to blow out this torch here. And I just want to remind everybody that your vote is your voice. So make sure that we hear it loud and clear when we go to the polls and vote on June 22nd. So to everybody here, thanks for joining us. Have a nice evening, and we'll see you on Monday.